Hello, sports fans. Or friends of sports fans. Last Christmas, I made a gift for someone who loves football. A U.S. map of all of the college football stadiums in the NCAA. He could use the pins to show all of the places that he'd been and all the places that he still wanted to go.
After sharing it online, I had some people requesting that I sell them. But apparently it costs $80 to ship an entire corkboard. I don't know how Amazon does it. So instead, here's how I made the map. A link is in the description to download the files yourself and cut out on an electronic paper cutter, or to buy all the pieces pre-cut from my Etsy shop. To start out, I'm using a corkboard that is 23 by 17 inches, not centimeters. Next, the pins I'm going to use are about 3/8 of an inch in diameter. Since there are about 130 schools, I got a set that had 150 pins, assuming that some of the pins would be bent or broken in the packaging. The only downside is that they have rounded tops, so hopefully the paper I'm printing the logos on goes with the curve and doesn't fold or crumple. So using my Silhouette Cameo, I first load up the cutting mat with black vinyl. This is where the states and text will be cut out. Unfortunately for me, it was trial and error for what setting to use, so ignore the settings I used for this side of the map. The paper cutter did its job and looks like it cut a little too deep and crumpled the vinyl. This also means it cut through the backing of the vinyl, so it would be quite the headache to try to weed. I'm better off just adding my transfer tape over the entire thing and weeding it after I apply it to the board. If it was cut correctly, I would add the tape the same way, peel back 2 of the corners of the transfer tape, and pull the backing out from underneath. This gives it a smooth application. In case you don't have the professional stuff on hand, check out my video about a cheaper option for transfer tape. I need to take off the backing from the vinyl so it can stick to the corkboard. What a nightmare.
Come on, Louisiana. No! No!
After that's all removed, I position the map onto the corkboard. But this is only the left half, so I kind of have to eyeball it to make sure there's enough room for the right side of the US. Get the ruler out of the way, and then burnish it on so there's no bubbles. Some eagle-eyed viewers might notice that I'm using Cricut tools with my Silhouette machine, and to that I say, good eye. I think this tool is called a bone scraper, and now get ready for some magic. It helps to pull the tape at a sharp angle the opposite direction. The vinyl should naturally want to stay on the corkboard, but sometimes it really wants to stick to the transfer tape, so some extra guiding is needed. Luckily, the cut was good enough that there were hardly any mistakes in the design, though I did have to fix some of the flaws with my X-Acto knife afterward. Now for the right half. This time I used the correct settings, and thank goodness it didn't cut through the backing, so I could weed it correctly. To make my life a little easier, I cut the states from the text so I could put them on separately. Oh, and here's some more magic. Feels like one of those oddly satisfying videos. I cut down the vinyl tape and apply it to the states, and after peeling off the backing from the vinyl, line it up on the corkboard. Hi, Toki. Thank goodness I left enough room. Pull off the transfer tape and voila! The US map is done. Now for all the words. I have to admit, weeding small things like this is a nightmare of its own, with all the counters and bowls and bars. Font terms. I got too impatient, so I decided I would take a lot of those out after they were already on the board. Here's an example of how to get troublesome vinyl to stick to the transfer tape if it doesn't want to let go of the backing. Now, since football is the center word, I place that first in the center of the board at the top and then add the other words on either side. The designer in me can't stand if it's uneven, and once the vinyl is laid down on the corkboard, it's a headache to try to move it. Then with my weeding tool, I take out the counters and bowls that were still there. It's not so hard to weed the title, but don't even talk to me about all the conferences in their little fonts. Look how nice that looks! Next is placing all the conferences. I want to make sure there's enough room to place the pins and that none of them end up running into the conference next to them. Hi, Toki. For the most part, I'm just eyeballing it, but they're maybe 3 inches apart? Sweet, we're ready to add some logos. For my own sanity, I made the sheet of logos in groups of their conferences, so I didn't have to go back and look up where they all belong later. The recipient of the gift I'm making this for might know where all the schools belong, but I sure don't. So after loading the printed sheet of logos, I have it start cutting. Unfortunately, they never seem to be perfectly lined up the first time.
It's not quite lined up.
So I have to adjust in the paper cutter application with some trial and error. When the circle seems to be lined up just right, I let it go wild and cut them all. Now I should note that at the bottom I have a few logos that aren't actually from conferences. They're bowl games, like the Rose Bowl, Las Vegas Bowl, Orange Bowl, but I didn't include all of them because there are so many. I just went with the most popular. At any rate, who's up for some more weeding? This job calls for the little dentist tool from the weeding kit, and you can simply pluck them up, no problem. For my sanity, I'll divide them up so all the logos from the same conferences are together, or if you get them from Etsy store, they'll already be separated in little baggies. Either way, organization is key. Finally, I glue the logos onto the back of the pins with Mod Podge. I'm sure really any clear drying glue works, I just happen to have a lot of Mod Podge on hand. And sure enough, the curve of the pins did make it a little harder to glue the logos on evenly, but just pressing around with my fingertips seems to be enough. After they're all dry, it's time to add all the logos to their conferences. There were a couple pins that didn't take well to being placed and broke off. Great. But since the Mod Podge was forgiving, I was able to simply peel off the logos from the broken pins and add them to some new ones.
And here's the final product. There was a lot of trial and error in putting this together, but it's really rewarding to see it all done and finished. And of course, if this is a gift for someone, it's really rewarding to see the expression on their face when you give them something so unique.
Something like this can be used for really any kind of bucket list map. Maybe for basketball arenas, national parks. I even started making one for museums I wanted to visit. If you make one yourself, I hope you have as much fun as I did. Otherwise, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.